first part is to import your artwork. File, import, or right-click, import, file. Select your artwork. If it's Illustrator, Photoshop file, make a decision if it's footage, which will be flat, or is it composition and retain layer sizes. And click on import. This creates a composition automatically, and this is where you can preview the layers if you need to drag them out individually. Click on the composition that was created with the file. Next, set up the pivot points by selecting the pan behind anchor point tool and clicking out on each part and setting the anchor point to where it belongs. If the snapping gets in the way, just turn off snapping. So this is the leg, arm, secondary arm, making sure by clicking here to get the secondary arm. Looking for the other leg that's on the other side of the critter. Selecting the body, and maybe the body is somewhere around the base of the character. Don't forget the balloon. And I'm thinking about deforming the balloon when it bounces on the ground. So I'm going to put the pivot point a little bit higher up like this. So when I do a scale, it'll scale upward like that. And that is setting up the pivot points. Next is dealing with the animation. And right now the animation is set to 30 seconds. I'm thinking this is an animation cycle, so I'm going to go into composition settings, and I'm going to set it down to 10 seconds right here. And if you want to deal with frames instead of duration, just control click here, and now when you go into composition settings, the duration will be set to frames instead of hour, minute, seconds. And if I want just, let's say, a 4-second animation cycle, or maybe 5 seconds, that's 150 frames before it repeats itself. Okay, I'm going to prototype the animation here, and not much is going to go on. I'll just do a little animation for the legs and arms. So selecting the two legs here and there by control clicking, select them both. I'm going to pull up the rotation, the R key. If this is neutral position, I'll select a rotation like this. And then maybe every second, I'll set the rotation like this. And then another second later goes by, and it returns to here, and this would be a great use of loop out. Maybe you want to be able to vary things. If you want to vary things, then loop out isn't the right choice. And I need this frame to be the same as this frame. This way when it loops around, the animation won't jump. I'm going to now go to this individual key and Command or Control C. And now with this track selected, I'll hit Command or Control V to paste, and I'll do the same thing for the other rotation track. Copy, and then at this frame, Command V for paste. So to copy, make sure you highlight the key by just clicking on it to select it. Previewing this animation. And now I'll offset the legs. To offset the legs, maybe I'll just do this. I'll take two. To offset the legs, I can either drag the timeline like this for that layer, and then I would need a loop out here. If I was going to do that manually, I could just delete this key, select all these keys, drag them over like this. I'll select this key again by deselecting and clicking on it, Control C. I'll go to that last frame, which is frame 150, and Command V for paste. Now there's an offset animation cycle for that. And I'll do the similar things for the arms and the tail. Last part is to connect all the body parts to the body. And to do that, that's pick whipping. I'll select all the layers and I'll deselect just the body layer by pressing the Control key and clicking on it again. So to select all layers, just hold down the Shift key and click on the first layer and then the last layer, and then Control click on the layer that you want to exclude, such as the body, and then I can either use the pick whip them all to the body like that, or I could use the drop down menu as well. And I did that so when the body gets rotated, all the other parts will get rotated as well. So starting there, and it's going to end there. And somewhere, let's say every 20 frames is this animation with the rotation tool. And I'm just clicking backwards. And I see the balloon's also getting rotated. That's something I don't want to happen. So I'll go to the balloon layer and I'll select none from the drop down to deselect the pick whipping for the balloon to the body. And now I'll go back to here. Let's say every 20 frames rotation happens. You can vary it a little bit, or you can go back later and adjust. Maybe 40, and quickly back there. Wherever you feel it's too extreme, go back and jump in between the keys and just lessen it. I'm clicking on this arrowhead to go between the keys and make it less extreme. And preview it again. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of flexibility to the body. And even though the Illustrator file is broken up into these layers, if I want a little bit of bendiness within the body itself, I'll select the body layer. I'll use the puppet pin tool. It's on the puppet position pin. And I'll click out around the bottom, maybe one around where the arms are, one around the back of the neck, and then one at the end of the nose for the gator. And the puppet pins come already to animate, so I'll expose puppet pin here, and I'll expose mesh 1. If I move my playback head away, you can see that the deform for that already has some keys in it. And I'll have to expand all those keys here. I'm going to select all these keyframes, Control C. I'll go to the other end and Control V. And that way I can go in between, such as frame 15 or frame 20. Deselect all the keys. Click on, with the puppet pin tool selected, click on the mesh show. And then select this key, and then select this pin. I'll just drag it upward for a moment. And I'll go a few frames forward. And maybe I'll drag it down or forward. Not too much, because you don't want a big distortion of your character. And I could go back and revisit the other parts, such as here. Pulling it down. When I'm done, I'll apply the same technique to the tail to make it look a little bit more rubbery. Right now I'm just going through the animation and wherever appropriate, dragging the pins over a little bit. I'll preview this part of this animation. So it looks a little less robotic and a little less like a piece of paper cut out rotating. And I'll continue this for the body. I'll do the same thing for the tail, where I'll select the tail, apply puppet pins, and follow the same technique to make that tail look a little bit more organic and rubbery.